We got the Green Bay Packers versus the Philadelphia Eagles, the second game of the 2024 NFL season, and it's going to be played in Brazil. And I'm not going to lie to you. Look, I love that the NFL is trying to become more international, but playing in Brazil is absolutely wild. Like, I mean, Brazil just banned X for crying out loud. So, I mean, it's not really the safest place to be at if you are a football player. And just personally, Brazil is one of those countries that, I love looking at pictures. I love seeing all of the great photos that gets taken from that part of the world, but it's definitely really low on my list of places that I would want to travel to, just with it being a little bit unsafe and everything they got going on with the government. And it's just a really weird place to be playing a football game. Like, let's just play in London. Maybe we can play in Mexico. Maybe get a game in Canada. Like, why would you play a game in Brazil before you will play a game in Canada? If anything, you need to be trying to get a little bit more into that Canadian football market. I'm just saying, like, I'm not the biggest fan of them playing this game in Canada, well, in Brazil, but, the Philadelphia Eagles, last year, they started out 10-1, and then their season just completely went left. I mean, their defense couldn't stop nobody. Their secondary was burnt toast. And Jalen Hurts, he went from looking like an MVP candidate to one of the most overrated quarterbacks in the NFL last year. And there's a lot that we're about to find out about Philadelphia in terms of if Nick Sirianni made the right coordinator hires, because you got Kellen Moore taking over as your new offensive coordinator, and Vic Fangio is going to be the guys calling plays for you on defense. And with you having a new coaching staff, you wonder, how long is it going to take for these players to truly get comfortable in these new systems, learning new terminology? And the Green Bay Packers, they're not the only team that's going to be having, some coaching staff problems to worry about, because the Green Bay Packers have a new defensive coordinator and Jeff Hafley, who's taking over for Joe Barry. Now, Joe Barry was probably one of the 3 worst defensive coordinators in the NFL last year. With Jeff Hafley replacing him, if this defense can be halfway decent under him, they got everything they need to be a Super Bowl contender this year and to win the NFC. And Green Bay defensively, to me, they've always been one of the NFL's most talented teams on that side of football. It's just that they haven't had a good enough defensive coordinator to maximize that level of talent that they have on that side of football. You know that they got really good corners. You got Jair Alexander. You got Preston Smith. You have Rashawn Gary, who's probably the most underrated pass rusher in the NFL. When he's fully healthy, he's a threat to win Defensive Player of the Year. Even last year, before he went down with the injury and had to miss some time, like, I had him as one of my top 5 candidates to win Defensive Player of the Year midway through the season. So there's a lot of talent on Green Bay's defense that if Jeff Hafley can put these players in the right positions to succeed, he can throw some exotic blitz packages out there, Philadelphia's offense could be in a little bit of trouble, because Jalen Hurts isn't that good against the blitz. That was definitely an area that he struggled in, being more prepared when teams are sending extra guys after him. And he just seems like he doesn't have no plan B or C. It's just like he's either throw a deep bomb to A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, and if it's no deep bomb there, I'm either going to try to run, utilize my legs, or, that's pretty much it. So I want to see how much more development are we going to see out of Jalen Hurts under new offensive coordinator Kellen Moore. I think one of the biggest matchups that's going to determine this game is going to be determined by the dudes in the press box. That's defensive coordinator for Jeff Hafley and offensive coordinator Kellen Moore for the Eagles. Because if Kellen Moore ends up getting the better of that matchup, Philadelphia should end up winning this game. Because this has potential to be one of those games that ends up being high scoring, potentially, because Vic Fangio is a more than capable defensive mind. But eventually Philadelphia's defense, even if they do play good enough to slow down Green Bay's offense for the first couple of quarters, if their offense does nothing and they have the same problems that they had last year, then you're going to see Philly's defense, even if it does look better under Fangio, it's going to get worn out and they're going to end up becoming gas because Green Bay, despite how good they can throw the football, they added Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs is one of the better running backs in the league. He's going to be an upgrade from Aaron Jones. He's going to be more physical, more tough. They're going to be able to be a more powerful team in terms of being able to win and push guys up front around. And I just love the kind of toughness that Josh Jacobs brings to the Packers. And if Philadelphia's defense ends up getting worn out in the fourth quarter because their offense can't sustain any drives, that's what's going to win this game for Green Bay. Because Jordan Love, this could be a game that he potentially struggles in with how good Vic Fangio is at disguising his coverages. And this is going to be a really big test for Jordan Love, because there's a small amount of people who believe that last year was just lightning in a bottle for Jordan Love and that he's going to come back down to earth. But me and the majority of folks out there believe that if you can go 20-3, have a 20-3 touchdown interception ratio the last 2 months of the season, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to carry that momentum into this year, especially into a game this early into the season that's going to have major implications on who can win the 1 seed. Because just like I said earlier, in that Chiefs-Ravens game, you look at it as, it being week 1. So even if you lose, it still isn't a loss that hurts you that bad. But where it does hurt you is that, what if Philadelphia is as good as expected and Green Bay is good as expected? Both of these two teams should be in the conversation for that first round bye in the NFC. And you could come back and look at this game for being the big determining factor for who ends up clinching the 1 seed in this conference this year. And for Philadelphia, your schedule is a little bit more tougher, in my opinion, than what the Green Bay Packers schedule is. But overall, you need to win more than what Green Bay does, because with how bad things ended for you last year, you lost to Baker Mayfield and Todd Bowles in a wild card round. It gets no worse than that. You really need to prove that, last season, how left things went was just a one-time occurrence. You need to win to get everybody bought back in again. Because if you lose this game, then you still have a bitter taste in your mouth from last year carrying over into this year. If there's anybody who really needs a win week 1, it's Philadelphia. Just because I think it would be great for the morale in the locker room, and it kind of would ease a little bit of the tensions when it comes to Nick Sirianni's job security. And I would be doing a major disservice to you guys if I didn't talk about Saquon Barkley. This is one of the biggest offseason acquisitions in the NFL. Saquon Barkley, he's arguably the second most talented back in the league, right behind Chris McCaffrey. Not only is he a monster on the ground, but he's also great in the passing game. And with Jalen Hurts having Saquon Barkley to be a great check down option for him, that should help out Jalen Hurts tremendously. When A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith are covered, you can dump it down to Saquon Barkley. He can take, a short pass and turn it into a 40, 50-yard gain with how explosive he is and with how great his vision is as well. And Green Bay's run defense has been a huge liability for the last 2-3 years. They've been unable to stop the run. So Saquon Barkley could be a big factor in Philadelphia being able to win that time of possession battle, keeping Jordan Love off the field, keeping their defense off the field as well. And if you can do that, you got a great chance being able to pull off this win. The Eagles are a 2.5-point favorite. I'm going to take Green Bay to win and cover. Listen, I just think for Green Bay, they got so much going for them with how hot they ended last season. And normally when you got a team that ends up getting hot during the second half of the previous year. They carried that momentum into the following season. Remember Detroit. In 2022, they started out a little slow, but then once they got the week 9 win, week 10, they started rattling off wins, and they were one of the NFL's hottest teams to end the 2022 campaign. And you saw how good they were last year. A lot of momentum that you build late season, as long as you can keep that same coaching staff in place, carries over to the following season. And with Green Bay, what should be a good defense, at least a halfway decent defense, with Jeff Hafley being your defensive coordinator, makes the difference in this game. With Kellen Moore, he's not a bad offensive coordinator. I'll probably say he's a pretty good offensive coordinator, but he's not a complete great coordinator, which is why, I do think that there's a good chance we end up seeing him lose that matchup between him and Jeff Hafley in the booth. I think Jeff Hafley, a lot of people just don't know how good of a defensive mind he is, but he had some really good defenses when he was the head coach of Boston College. And he does have a little bit of some NFL experience, so it's not like he's a novice at this level. So give me the Green Bay Packers with the win. I'll take them. 24-17 is my final score prediction for this game.